Yes, good. Last today we are going to talk about biodiversity, great life sciences, term 3 and term 4. I'm sure that you understand this term 3, term 4 work. It is quite important for us to get ready and make sure that the whole syllabus is finished without wasting any time. Please just check on the board. I'm just going to use the notes on the board for demonstrations and also illustrations of what we are going to be talking about today. Don't forget to like the channel. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe and keep connected by turning on your notification button. Biodiversity, by definition, it refers to variety of plants and animals. A variety of plants and animals on the animal species on the earth. So, in other words, we are please understand that biodiversity, it refers to variety of plant and animal species on earth. So in other words, this just to say the variety of what of living organisms on earth. That's what you mean by biodiversity. So the living organisms is both what plants and animals that we are to look at. The both fauna and flora, the are both plants and animals. That is what you need to understand. So biodiversity, why do we need to worry about it? Loss of biodiversity is a concern. I'm sure that you can see right now we have got various international agreements and protocols that were put or that are put in place with regard to the consciousness of people towards the earth in terms of the welfare of living animals and I mean the welfare of plants and animals in general. Not only talking about people, but plants and animal, wild animals, domestic animals, and so forth. So what we need to understand is that biodiversity ensures that people have got food. Importance of it, it ensures that there is fresh water. Fresh water is available as a result of a balanced ecosystem. A balanced ecosystem, an ecosystem which is naturally existing, which has got the natural factors interplaying on their own, it also promotes biodiversity. So in this regard, we need to understand that biodiversity, it also ensures that we have got medicines and fuel that we can also have from environment are also obtained as a result of what? Of biodiversity. Ensuring that biodiversity is there, it ensures healthy living of people in general. It ensures that animals that are wild animals can also be able to survive. I'm sure that we understand the natural food web, the ecosystem, the interdependence of organisms, that we cannot talk about various other important processes like nitrogen cycles and stuff, carbon cycle and all those things. Those cannot be defined if there is no variety of nature, or if there is no variety of living organisms, no matter how small or minute some microorganisms are, but we need to have them. Hence, there is need in terms of management of disposables or management of waste, as in terms acids and all other things that can also affect our natural environment. So it also ensures that climate is regulated. The welfare, the extent to which our climate is a concern is very important. Climate change is imminent. Factors that are coming now or problems that we are seeing now, some of them are contributed or are attributed to factors that have to do with climate change. So biodiversity ensures that climate is regulated. It also ensures that floods are controlled. I'm sure that we have heard of the flooding of coastal places because of the melting of the glaciers and stuff, which we are to say that there is quite extreme floodings that sometimes are taking place as a result of increase in temperatures or global temperatures, which are causing coastal places to be flooded as a result of what? Of extreme temperatures, which are melting what? Our icelands. So it also makes sure that diseases are kept in check. Diseases are kept in check as in regard to biodiversity. We have got predators eat the sick animals and the water is purified. So in regard to that, check, for example, this interrelation, the relationship here of the predators and the sick animals. We are saying when animals die, when animals or wild animals they die, they don't just die and mess the environment. They are what? They die and what? And and they are eaten by what? By the predators, by their predators. In terms of that, this is an interaction that is also keeping the ecosystem at checks and balance. That when those animals die or whatever that can die, which is animal, it is not just decomposing. At the same time, decomposition is important again. For it takes place also where we have got also the worms and other microorganisms acting on them. But at the end of the day, we are saying there is a balance and check relationship that is existing in a natural ecosystem where predators are also feasting on the sick animals or feasting on dead animals, which would also ensure that the environment is kept safe. So factors that reduce biodiversity: habitat destruction through farming methods. Factors that can reduce biodiversity. What are those factors that can reduce biodiversity? Habitat destruction through farming methods. For example, overstocking livestock and overgrazing pastures for too long is one in one area results in what? It results in soil contamination from excess dung and urine. When there is overstocking, it's problems of overstocking, it results in soil contamination, which also is as a result of excess dung and urine. When animals are grazing on a piece of land over a long period of time, their urine and their dung can also cause soil contamination. There is also problem to do with soil erosion, the destruction of vegetation, where now soil is exposed. Instead of it being covered by the vegetation is no longer there. It has been overgrazed, hence it results in soil erosion. Makes way for alien plants to take over. I'm sure that you know there are some plants that are not eaten by our indigenous animals. Those animals, those plants, when they are not regulated or when they find space as a result of destruction of the indigenous vegetation, they flourish in those pieces of land, which eventually causes what? A land invasion by alien plants, which eventually destroys our lands there, and then reduces the diversity of vegetation, which lead to land degradation and eventually desertification. So habitat destruction through poor farming methods, which is overstocking, it reduces biodiversity by the destruction of natural habitats, by the destruction of the soils, by also having having the manifestation of desertification, where our land is no longer able to sustain its natural vegetation. Monoculture. Monoculture, it is a farming practice. It's a farming practice in which a single crop, a single crop is grown over the same piece of land, over the same piece of land for a long period of time. This can also be a problem. Monoculture, growing one crop on the same piece of land over a long period of time, it can actually destroy the land. It can actually cause, it actually reduces the yields. So one crop is grown year in, year out, year after year. When one crop is grown on over the same piece of land, without rotation, we call that monoculture. So it leads to what? It leads to loss of indigenous species and biodiversity. Indigenous species can be lost. Check, for example, there are some crops, or I mean, there are some animals, some insects, some microorganisms that must feed on the indigenous or on the other type of crops, but that land has been extensively occupied or used by one vegetation, hence those animals which must feed on the indigenous can die. So we have loss of indigenous species, and obviously biodiversity took place. Environmental pollution is caused by pesticides and fertilizers, which we are saying the same pesticides and fertilizers are applied repeatedly over the same piece of land. This can also destroy the landscape, can also destroy the environment. There is also poisoning and eutrophication of the nearby water supplies. Eutrophication, I'm sure we understand, washing off of fertilizers and is fertilizers and chemicals from arable lands into water, into our water resources, That is called what? That is called eutrophication. Eutrophication, it results in algae, where we have got those types of crops, that water-loving plants that can grow, and then in that regard, they also affect our aquatic lives, which at the end of the day is compromising on our biodiversity that we are referring to. And then even those water-loving plants, they also cause problems, as in terms of uh, deoxygenating water bodies, which would also cause those water, or our water lives, or our water organisms to die. And then that is also a compromisation with regard to what? To biodiversity. And then golf courses is another way of reducing biodiversity. Golf estates. Most of golf estates are built in ecologically sensitive areas with high natural biodiversity, which is destroyed. I'm sure that you know, Mr. Golf courses are not found within towns. They are built outside or at the peripheries of the city, at the outskirts of the town, which we are saying they are ecologically sensitive areas. They are areas which are very important for our natural ecosystems and natural animals and even plants. So that destroys natural biodiversity by construction of buildings, which is high density housing on the estates. Buildings are constructed in the Gulf Coast, therefore they destroy our vegetation. Indigenous bush and trees are cleared, and dependent animals and birds are affected. The idea or the establishment of Gulf Coast, it causes destruction of vegetation, clearance, massive clearance of land, which is destroying the vegetation, where animals and birds that depends on those indigenous plants and are affected in that respect. And then there is also the same pollution impact as for urban town housing, with the same negative effects on birds, predators, and water bodies. There is pollution as long as people are occupying land. Pollution is inevitable. We have got problems to do with pollution, which is as a result of urban growth or urban planning. So these negative effects would also affect our what? Our birds, it affects our predators and also the water systems. So for example, there is what you call pesticides that are sprayed sometimes by people who are using those golf courses, killing some insects there. These insects are now eaten by the birds, which eventually the birds will die. In that respect, it's also a way which is destroying our biodiversity. Private gardens on the estates, increasing the threat of alien invasion. I'm sure that you know, Musa, that people always come with their exotic plants in the Gulf Coast, which is also another disadvantage, which we are saying it increases alien invasion, and then golf fairways that represent monoculture on huge scale, e.g., the alien Kikuyu grass, requiring pesticides, fertilizers, and huge amounts of water. These are management practices that are done in Gulf Coast, which you find out people grow Kikuyu grass there. The Kikuyu grass is managed by fertilizers. Quite amount of water is used, which at the end of the day are also impacting on the natural biodiversity. And then mining both open cast is to say it's just a open mining method, and mining and underground mining destroys the habitats negatively, which affects our biodiversity in many ways. Mining affects our biodiversity. Open cast, which have to do with surface mining. Mines take up more space and generate noise and dust pollution. Where mining is taking place, open casts sometimes are done, which also takes such a lot of space, which would make noisy, destabilizing our natural ecosystem, destroying our natural vegetation. Also, pollution is taking place there, where the certain chemicals are used in the washing of minerals and stuff. When vegetation and topsoils are removed from the surface mining, animals and plants habitats are destroyed. That is quite straightforward. That vegetation, topsoils is the one that is rich for what? For plant growth. Hence, if it is removed, it also impacts on our vegetation, affecting the habitats of our animals. All mines produce tons of gas emissions. Also, we have got solid waste, liquid effluent, which is sewage, and some result in acid mine drainage. These poison underground water supplies and seep into our water and river systems. The river systems are affected as a result of this class. The mining system. Huge mining tracts destroys vegetation. I'm sure that I've talked about extensive what's called extensive cutting down of trees, which is also taken, or which is always taking place where mining is taking place, which reduces soil drainage again. And then they also compact land, the machinery that is used there. And then it also exposes the topsoils to what? To erosion and various degradation processes or degradation activities. The topsoils are exposed to extensive degradation because of the cutting down of trees or deforestation that we are talking about. Urbanization also affects our biodiversity. As population increases and cities grow, more indigenous vegetation is cleared to build more industries and road networks, which we talk about in this regard. We talk about the development or the establishment of infrastructure to support human lives. There are also establishment of infrastructure, which can be roads, which can be buildings, which can be uh, every form of human requirement that they would need. They can also destroy the natural vegetation, which is negatively impacting biodiversity by increasing various types of pollution, which can be land, it can be water, noise, and even lighting. You'll see that sometimes, obviously, where we can have where we have got human settlement, lighting, natural or artificial lighting is put there, electrical lights are put there, which can scare our wild animals, and then some can die and some can just move away, relocate, migrate. That is affecting our biodiversity. Physical barriers to animals for movement and reproduction patterns. Physical barriers are actually created. People are very selfish when they establish their settlement. They would never want to see any natural animal or wild animals in those areas. They are killed. They are fumigated, every form of destruction that can be done, which can cause them to migrate or even to fail to reproduce. They are done in order of getting rid of them, which is also a negative impact on what? On biodiversity. Rainwater runoff causing flooding. I'm sure you talk about the concrete surfaces that are built, the concrete surfaces that we have, concrete surfaces in what? In towns. The concrete surfaces in towns are there, which we are saying are causing runoff water as a lot, I mean quite a lot, and then the growth of alien vegetation again, where people would build their own or would have their flowers and so forth. They negatively also impact on what? On our biodiversity. Deforestation, deforestation, deforestation is just a massive cutting down of trees, extensive, extensive cutting down of vegetation, extensive cutting down of vegetation. So therefore, what does it do? When vegetation, we are saying cutting down without replacing it, it is removal of vegetation at a large extent. As of course, we should talk about this vegetation, indigenous vegetation that we are talking about. The indigenous vegetation is cut off, the destruction of woodlands, indigenous forest areas are for purposes of timber, agriculture, fuel supplies, and other human activities. They lead to what? Destruction of habitats. For insects are no longer there. We have got our pollinators such as the bees and the amphibians, e.g. frogs also, they cannot be able to stay in bare places or in uh, areas where vegetation is extremely destroyed. Therefore, the loss of many medicinal and food plants species are there, which we talked about as advantages of what? Of biodiversity. And then last but not least is loss of wetlands and grasslands. Loss of wetlands. Wetlands are habitats for of a rich biodiversity of plants and animals. I'm sure that we know that wetlands must be there for our variety of many plants and animals. There are water-loving plants and animals that are there. So any pollution or removal of wetlands for development threatens the biodiversity of soils, vegetation, including useful and medicinal plants associated with wetlands. So the wetlands, when they are destroyed, we are to lose such quite useful functions of vegetation and also medicine that we are referring to. There is also the capacity of the freshwater purification and storage. I'm sure that you know that we have got underground water, which we refer to as water tables. Water tables are quite important in terms of controlling and also ensuring continuous supply of water for people, clean water supplies. Hence, we are saying those capacity of fresh water are also affected by what? By destruction of wetlands and grasslands there, which would also cause flooding, can also be caused. And then the habitats of fish and other aquatic animals are destroyed when wetlands are destroyed. Tourism and recreation, wildlife and bird conservation is also affected. I'm sure that we know recreation. People need to go for scenic viewing just for fun and many other functions. Hence, if those are not there, if wetlands are destroyed, we might also lose such important tourism functions, which also generate what? Which also generate the most needed revenue, which we call the foreign currency. Grasslands support rich biodiversity of wildlife, which is both plants and animals or birds. And if they are removed or polluted, this will lose several endangered, threatened species that survive in those grasses, worms, and insects that populate the grasslands. I'm sure that is quite clear. Many useful medicinal plants are also destroyed by the loss of grasslands. Ecotourism opportunities such as hiking trails, they are also destroyed because of loss of grasslands. Uh, Flood control and water filtering capacities of grasslands, water filtering and also flood control. I'm sure that surface runoff, we know very well that is controlled or it is regulated because of the grasslands, which would at the end of the day avoid what? Avoid flooding. And then lastly, I'm gonna look at poaching, which is the illegal hunting and killing of what? Of wild animals for either food or money. It is hunting and killing of wild animals illegally, which are to do for or which is done for either food, it can be for either for money, whatever it is, but it is the illegal hunting or collecting of species, either for food or for money. So it is poaching. Where people are doing that, it is quite it is so against our government legislation. So This, it has to do with the removal of any species negatively affects other species. This results in biodiversity again. And then culling is the careful and legal control of animal numbers to protect biodiversity, which we are saying it can either by killing the old animals, they can be identified and killed from their populations there. Culling is quite a good thing, which can also be done in order to check and balance the natural habitat and ecosystems. So in South Africa, we can talk about the abalone, we can talk about the rhino, elephants, examples of animals that are poached. There are examples of animals that are poached. In this context, I just want us to understand to say what can be done to reduce poaching, ways of reducing poaching. We can talk about government intervention by what uh, fining and sentencing perpetrators. People who are found poaching, they must be sentenced, they must be fined heavily. So therefore, there must be deterrent. There must be deterrent processes or deterrent charges that are put in place to ensure that those people who are poaching, they don't do that. So we are saying fining and sentencing of perpetrators. Sentencing of perpetrators. We can talk about education and training of people. Education and training. People must be trained, education and training, so therefore people can understand the importance of endangered species. The endangered species, these are species that are at the verge of what? These are species which are at the verge of extinction. So if people are taught about their importance, therefore they cannot continuously poach and kill them. We can talk about licensing of the licensing of the buying and selling of products from the endangered species. Licensing licensing of buying and selling of products from endangered species is quite important. We can also talk about uh, putting serious security, putting in heavy and strong security is also very important. Security systems must be there, which can be the security for people not to bypass or not to trespass. Such things can also be done. Uh, Such things can also be done there. So in that respect, I'm saying thank you very much. And then please make sure that you keep connected by turning on your notification button. And also don't forget to like the videos so then we can keep posted. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.